Tonight, we begin a new series entitled God's Answer to Our Unmet Needs. I don't believe anyone would argue with me when I say that we live in a world filled with pain and suffering. We live in a world where people are troubled, people are wounded, people have been abused, people have been neglected, all kinds of issues. What do you see when you look at the news, 6 o'clock news, or you pick up the paper and you read about stories of someone murdering someone or someone committing a crime, some atrocity, one human being towards another? What do you think about? What do you see? Evil and hatred, okay? What else do you see?
People don't know their way.
People who've lost their way.
What is that about?
It's a good question. That's why we're having this class. That's why we're talking about this. Because hanging nooses is a part of what I'm talking about. Here's the point. When you peel back all of the layers of behavior, at the root of all such behavior, hanging nooses, hatred, racial intolerance, murder, crime, when you peel back all of the layers like an onion, when you get to the heart of it, what you will find is that there are some needs that have been unmet in someone's life. And this is how these people respond to these unmet needs. Have you ever wondered why there are so many angry people in the world? Have you ever wondered why so many people nowadays are on antidepressant and anti-anxiety drugs? People are taking drugs just to get them through the day today, just to cope with all of the things that we have to face on a daily basis. Have you ever done anything that you know was wrong? You knew it was wrong, but you did it anyway. And then after you did it, you ask yourself, why did I do that? What's wrong with me? I feel bad about it, And we as Christians, we ask God to forgive us. And we know that God will forgive us. But then we turn right around and do it again. And then we feel bad all over again. Have you ever wondered why these kind of things happen? Brothers and sisters, everybody has a story. Everyone has a story. Behind every news report that you see on TV, behind every crime that's committed, there is a story behind it. And as I said, if you peel back the layers, you will find that at the root of the behavior is some unmet needs. So the purpose of this series, God's Answer to Our Unmet Needs, is to demonstrate that, number one, God created us with certain needs. Instilled in every human being is some basic God-given needs. And we're going to talk about these needs. We're going to list them. There are some needs that every human being has. The need to feel loved, the need to feel secure, the need to feel accepted. These are basic human needs that every human being has. There are some needs that are specific to males and females. Every woman needs to feel secure, needs to feel like, she's provided for, she's protected. Every woman needs that. Every female needs that. Every male needs to feel respected. These are basic God-given needs that we have. And whenever these needs are unmet, we try to meet these needs in ways that, in our minds, is meeting the needs, but in the eyes of God, is violating His law, and we get into trouble. Let me try and explain to you like this. When we talk about Don't laugh at my drawing now. All right? This is a tree. Okay? What is beneath the surface of every tree? Huh? What is the purpose of the roots? Huh? Now, this is the ground, okay? The roots go beneath the surface. Isn't that right? You can't see the roots, but the condition of the root is going to determine the health of the tree. Isn't that right? Now, on the tree, someone get for me Matthew chapter 7, verse 15 beginning. On the tree are fruit, right? The purpose of the tree is to produce fruit. Now, the fruit are seen. Isn't that right? But now, the condition of the fruit is determined by the condition of the root. If you have a healthy root system, then you have good fruit. Now, in my analogy, the fruit represents actions. It represents behavior, the things that you see in people. The root represents the heart, that which you do not see, but everything springs from the heart. All right? Tree represents your life. All right? Let me show you a principle in the Bible. Matthew chapter 7, beginning with verse 15. Here's a principle given in this text. Now, the context, Jesus is talking about being aware of false prophets, people who will lure you away. And you can tell them, you can know them by their actions, by their fruit. But the principle is the same. The principle is this. A good tree cannot bring forth bad fruit, right? The condition of the tree is going to determine the fruit. Good tree can't bring forth bad fruit. Bad tree can't bring forth good fruit, right? In this analogy, the tree, the health of the tree is determined by the health of the root system, right? The heart. Here is my point. There are a lot of people in the world today who have a problem down here. We can't see down here. What we see are the fruit. We see the behavior, we see the actions, we see the result of the condition of the root system down here. Isn't that right? When you judge someone, brothers and sisters, and here is where I'm going in this series, there are a lot of people, as I said, who are wounded. There are a lot of hurt people, and they're not all out in the world. There are a lot of wounded people in the Lord's church. There are a lot of people who carry burdens, who carry hurt, who carry things that have happened to them in their past every day when we assemble in this building. How did you get there is the question. How did we get there? And is God concerned about it? Is he aware of it? What is it he plans to do about it? In this series, we're going to look at how God made us, because in order to get to the heart of the problem, and incidentally, the heart of the human problem is the problem of the human heart. That's what this analogy is about. If you get a person's heart right, you get that person right, because the person's actions are only reflective of the condition of their heart. Isn't that right? Now, the purpose of this series is for us to see how people got to where they are. How did we get to where we are today? How did the world get in such bad shape? And the only way we can do that effectively is to go back to the beginning, to look at how God made us, to look at the God-given needs that he gave us, to determine how these needs became unmet. And ultimately, we're going to conclude this series by demonstrating that Jesus Christ is God's answer to our unmet needs. All of your needs, brothers and sisters, are summed up in Jesus Christ. He supplies all of our needs. This past week, I went to the doctor, having some health problems. I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. Never knew I had high blood pressure. Never had it before. I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me that my blood pressure was so high I was a walking time bomb, that I was walking around on the verge of having a stroke and a heart attack. So she sent me to a heart specialist to have my heart checked out, because I was told that high blood pressure puts, undue burden and strain on the heart. And while I was at the heart doctor, this doctor explained to me how the human body works. He explained the fact that all of your organs, all of the systems of your body work in concert with one another, and when one is out of whack, it affects the other. He explained to me that high blood pressure causes your heart to work harder and longer. That could eventually have wear and tear, put wear and tear on your kidneys. It could damage your liver. It could damage other systems of your body. I said all that to say this. In order for us to get to the root cause of the problems people have in the world, we need to make a diagnosis of it. First step is the proper diagnosis of the problem. You see, what we have in society is we focus on the effects and not the root cause of the problems. Building more jails is not the solution to the crime problem. Handing out condoms and birth control is not the solution to the sex problem in our society. That's a misdiagnosis. That's treating the symptoms and not the root cause. What we're going to do in this series is we're going to peel back the layers, and we're going to get to the root cause. And the only way we can do that is to go to the beginning and see how God made us, to see what needs it is that God gave us, how these needs became unmet, how these unmet needs affect our lives, and eventually how God can make it all right again. Why did Jesus come to this earth? What was the purpose of Jesus coming? Because it didn't take him 33 years to save the lost. He didn't have to be here 33 years to accomplish that.
He was the way to give us a better life.
Okay. John chapter 10, verse 10, is it? So I'm going to get Luke chapter 4, verses 18. And I'm just giving you previews. We're going to examine all of these things. We're going to look, in this series, we're going to look at the ministry of Jesus. And I'm going to show you that Jesus came here to give us a better quality of life. Jesus came to undo the things that have been done to us. John chapter 10, verse 10, I believe it is, said that Jesus said, I came that you may have life, and that you may have it more abundantly. Isn't that right? As Jerry said, he came to increase the quality of our lives. But look at Luke chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. What does the Bible say?
Luke chapter 4, verse 18 and verse 19. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he had anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He had sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord.
Thank you. Al Green asked the question in the 70s, how do you mend a broken heart? What's the answer? Huh? You notice Al asked the question, but he never gave anybody an answer. You ever notice that? He asked the right question, but he didn't give us an answer. Oprah is not the solution to our problem. I love Oprah. Oprah has some serious stuff on her show. Dr. Phil is not the answer to our problems. He can't fix our heart. A cardiologist can't fix a broken heart, because the heart that the Bible describes, the heart that I'm talking about, is not the blood pump. Cardiologists can fix this. But the heart that the Bible talks about, the control center, that part of man that controls his intellect, his emotion, his will, his conscience, the things that make us who we are, cardiologists can't fix that. The answer to the question, how do you mend a broken heart, and actually is, who can mend a broken heart? Jesus. That's the answer to that question. Now, the objective tonight, next week, we're going to get into the the meat of this. We're going to start looking at how we're made on next week. But tonight, the objective tonight is to go through this course outline. I want you to look at this handout that was given to you, and we're going to look at the things that we're going to cover in this series. And I want to go through this because we may not get a chance to finish it all. It depends on how long it takes. I'm not accustomed to being on a time schedule, having so many weeks to complete a series. Normally when I teach a series, I teach it till I'm done with it, so I can take my time, but that's not the case here, so we need to kind of be more mindful of our time. So here is where we're going with this series. Here's the course outline, the things that we're going to be looking at in this series. Number one, talking about the need for this course. And as I said in the beginning, the need for this course is obvious. I mean, the current state of our world. You look at the world and we need to know, we need to understand why people do the things that they do. We need to know and understand why we do the things we do. How many of you here have ever wondered why you do some of the things you do? You do stuff, and then after you wonder, well, why did I do that? Beside me, how many people here? You ever really sat down and seriously thought about this? Why do I do this? Huh? There is an answer, and we're going to get to it in this series. Course outline. A, we're going to look at how we are made. We're going to look at what makes us tick. The divine design for our lives. Next week, we're going to look at how God made us. You do know we are threefold beings, right? We are body, soul, spirit, right? We are physical beings, we are spiritual beings, we are psychological beings. We have needs in all of these areas. Problem is that we may have a need that's unmet in a certain area, and we're trying to fill it or get it met in the wrong area. You ever had your arm itching and you're scratching your leg? You're scratching, but it's not satisfying the itch because you're scratching the wrong part, right? That may be humorous, but a lot of people do that. A lot of people have psychological and spiritual needs, and they're scratching the physical. They're trying to fill these needs, spiritual and psychological needs, physically, and it's not working. Okay? So we need to know how God made us. We're going to look at how God made us. We're going to talk about temperament, character, personality. These are all of the things that comprise who we are. Next week, we're going to look at temperament. Temperament are inborn traits that every human being gets through the genetic gene pool from the 4 grandparents to parents. There are certain characteristics, certain things that that are passed down to us through the gene pool that we have no control over. Things like the color of your eyes, your height, your physical structure. There are certain things that we have that's meant. Then there is character. And I don't want to go too much into it because we're going to get into it next week. But character is something that is built in you based upon the events, the experiences, the circumstances of your life. Okay? Then there is personality. Personality is the face you show to the world. You ever heard the saying, Smokey Robinson had a song back in the day called Tears of a Clown. Smiling on the outside, but on the inside, crying. Well, the smile that you're showing is personality. This is what you're showing, but that's not what's really going on the inside. We're going to look at how we're made. Temperament. There are 4 basic temperaments that all of us have a blend of. And next week I'll give you a handout showing what these temperaments are. One of the temperaments is called melancholy. Then there's a temperament called sanguine. Then there's a temperament called phlegmatic. And there's a temperament called choleric. We are a combination, a blend of one or more of these temperaments. And I'll give you a list to describe. You ever notice how some people are just hyper and they just move around, can't sit still, Yeah. That's because of their temperament. And then there are other people like Brother Wayne Darby, who's just cool and laid back, and the house could be on fire, and he's just chilling. That's his temperament. That temperament's called flayed back, easy, laid back, all right? Some people are built like that, all right? But then we're going to look at number 3, or B, on your handout, the nature of our needs. There are some needs that we all have as human beings. As I said earlier, there are some basic human needs that we all have. The need to feel loved, the need to feel accepted, the need to feel wanted. Basic human needs. Then there are some needs that are gender specific, some needs that women have more so than men, like the need to feel secure, the need to feel provided for. Some needs men have more so than women, need to feel accepted. You ever notice in Ephesians chapter 5, when Paul says that the husband is the head of the wife, and then it says, see that the wife reverence her husband. He says, husband, love your wife, but wife, reverence your husband. Basic needs. The basic need of the wife is to feel loved, to feel secure, to feel provided for. Basic need of the man, and that word reverence means to be respected. That's basic needs that we have. Then there are some needs that we have that are individual. Some of us have individual needs. Some of us need more attention than others. You ever had people like that? Some people are a little more needy than other people. We all have needs, brother and sister. God-given needs. God has an agenda for those needs being met, but Satan also has an agenda for those needs. And that's how we get tripped up. That's how we get tripped up. C, we're going to look at our needs in the light of God's purpose, God's divine pattern. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about the needs that God gave you. You do know that God gave you all of your needs, right? We all have certain urges that are God-given. God gave us all the urge of hunger and thirst. God-given urges, right? The urge of sex. God gave us that urge. But he has a purpose, a design for getting those needs met. 4, or D. And these, and like I said, these are things we're going to cover. I'm just giving you the course outline where we're headed with this series. I'm going to illustrate how our needs are unmet. You know, there are a lot of people who have been wounded because of neglect. I mean, starting from way down here. Abuse. Things have happened to them in their lives, and it has caused them to be wounded. And incidentally, wounded people wound people. Hurt people hurt people. And that's why I asked you the question, what do you see when you look at the news and you see these stories about what's going on in the world and how people hurt one another? What do you see? What I see are a lot of people with some needs that have not been met. That if you peel back the layers of the behavior and get to the root cause of the problem, you will find that there are a lot of people in need of some serious help. Go ahead, sis. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Because we have to grow and mature in the Lord to become all He wants us to be.
Absolutely. And see, when we talk about next week how God made us, I'm going to talk about that. When we talked about character, remember I said character? Your character is built based upon your experiences. If you are a child that was constantly neglected, constantly abused, constantly told that you were worthless or you wouldn't amount to anything, if you were constantly fed a mental diet of that, that affects how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself. It affects how you respond to issues in the world. There are a lot of people faced with that. So yes, parenthood is a tremendous responsibility because the first 6 years of a child's life, 90% of that child's emotional suitcase is packed. We are packing an emotional suitcase that our children are going to have to carry the rest of their lives. In the first 6 years of a child's life, most of the stuff that makes up their character is already there. And you heard the expression, you bend a tree when it's young. That's why the Bible says, train up a child when he's young, right, in the way that he should go. Why? Because when he gets older, it's harder. You take an oak tree out there, you go try and bend it, you're going to have trouble trying to bend that tree, but if you caught it when it was a little twig, when you can shape it, it's much easier to mold. Same principle with human beings, with rearing and raising people. See, most of our issues, brothers and sisters, begin as seeds planted in our lives based on, the experiences that we've had, based on things that we've experienced and gone through in our life. Most of our issues begin or start out as these seeds planted in our mind. And the mind is like a tape recorder. It records all of the events, every word that's ever been spoken to you, every experience you've ever had in this life is recorded in your mind. That's what we call a memory. And sometimes, given certain situations and put into certain situations, it may trigger a memory. And make no mistake, a painful memory, 30 years after the fact, is still painful. Matter of fact, here's a story of a lady. I clipped this out of the Houston Chronicle in February of this year. This is a lady who, at the age of 17 years old, she's 40 now. 23 years ago, this lady went to a frat party, and she was drugged and raped at a frat party. And in this article, she's confronting her person who victimized her. And he's describing how that this event haunted him, how it changed his life, turned him into an alcoholic, trying to deal with the guilt and all of the things that went along with that. She's describing how it just turned her world upside down. And all of the things that she's done as a result of this experience happening to her. This can be multiplied by the thousands every day. There are a lot of people who've gone through, and maybe not necessarily this, but something happened in their lives that caused them to be affected in how they view life, how they view themselves, how they respond to life's situations. All of us have been there, brothers and sisters. Every last one of us have a story that we can tell that would explain why we do what we do. How many of you know yourself? I mean, know what makes you tick. You know why you do the things you do. How many of you know that? Huh? How long have you known you? Let me ask that question. Huh? And the reason why I ask that, because I'm 53 years old, and it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I really knew what made me tick.
I still don't know. I'm a little older than you are.
And it's been only maybe 5 years. I went through the majority of my life doing things and then asking myself, why did I do that? Why did I get into that relationship? Why did I do that act? Never could understand, and it baffled me. And it wasn't until I finally realized why I do the things that I do. When I peeled back the layers of behavior and got to the root cause of what the needs were and how and why those needs were unmet, that I was able to understand. Some people go their whole lives and never get there without understanding why they do the thing they do. When you understand, brothers and sisters, how God made us, when you understand what our needs are, when you understand how those needs are unmet, then you can begin to fix the problem. Well, allow God to fix the problem, because you can't fix the problem.
I want to reflect on that question, how do you know who you are?
Mm-hmm.
The way I look at it, most of the problems we have are ego-driven, and it goes back, for me, to when Paul talked about where the battle really was between the spirit and the flesh, and that's a battle that we fight every day.
Yeah.
And out of that scenario, you can determine I can determine who I am by the things that I let decide how I react in my life. And it's an ongoing battle. And so I get to know the things that I want and do or don't want. I want the best, I want the widest, I want the shortest. It's ego driven, and it's a battle between my flesh and what's spiritually right. And so it's an ongoing battle, and I get to know who I am by the choices that I make. And I win a whole lot of them, and I know we all do. We want to win all of them, but we're not going to win all of them. But from that scenario, I know who I am from the decisions I make on whether I do something that's for my ego or for my flesh, or whether I choose the spiritual side.
Thank you.
Brother, I want to tell you, we can win every one of them. Every time we lose, if we take something from that and use that as a stepping stone, then we have won. So it's all in how we think. If we tell ourselves we're not going to win them all, we won't. But if we tell ourselves that even if we don't get it, if my sin is lying, and I really don't want to be a liar, and every time I recognize why I'm lying, and I use that as just like in running track, you use that to build on, then I'm going to stop lying, because the more I walk in the Spirit, the less I'm going to lie. And we have to talk to ourselves, and we have to say the word out loud to ourselves in order for us to defeat the devil, because he is constantly playing mind games with us and making us think that we cannot win every time. But we can. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And if we believe that, if we truly believe it, then we're going to keep on pressing until we see every day that we have won.
Jesus came to show us that it was possible to live a sinless life. He came, he lived, and I asked the question, why did Jesus come? And someone said to save sins. And I told you that's true, but that's not the only reason he came. He lived 33 years, and the scripture says in Hebrews chapter 4, verses 15, 16, 17, that he experienced all of the things that we experienced, yet without sin. So he came to demonstrate that it was possible. So we all know that it's possible. The possibility exists because he came, set the pattern, he came, lived the life, showed it, walked the walk, so that we follow his example. But the reality is, Satan also knows that it's possible, and he's doing everything he can to make it impossible for us. Now, if your weakness is lying, and you're just going to hold fast and determine not to lie, he'll let you have that one, and he'll slip in something else on you. Catch you from the back, That's the way he is. Isn't that right? Now, let me finish this because I only have a couple of minutes left. In this series, we're going to examine the consequences of trying to supply our own needs. You remember I said that Satan has a role. God gave us certain needs, but Satan wants us to meet those needs outside of the will of God. Satan will take the seeds that have been planted in our lives and our minds based on experience that we have. For instance, if you were abused, if you were neglected as a child, you've been wounded as a child, Satan will parlay that into you're feeling terrible about yourself, feeling like you're a worthless, useless person. You have nothing to offer to the world. And then you go through life feeling that way and acting that way because that's the way you feel. You see? Satan has a big role in these things. We're going to look at his role in it. Then we're going to demonstrate God's purpose and power to provide our needs. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3, the scripture says, according as the divine power given unto us everything that pertains to life and godliness, through the knowledge of him who has called us by glory and virtue. God has supplied everything we need in this life. Then we're going to look at Jesus being God's answer to our unmet needs. You have had your heart broken? Jesus can fix it. You feel unworthy, Jesus can fix that. You've been abused and neglected, you've been hurt, Jesus can fix it. See, we try to fix it by scratching the wrong part. We have a psychological or physical or spiritual need that's unmet, and we try and fix that by scratching something physical. Scratching your arm is not going to satisfy the itch in your legs. You have to scratch the right part. And in order to scratch the right part, you have to know which part it is that itches, right? Because a lot of our needs, brothers and sisters, are in areas that we trying to meet it in another area. We're not even in the right part. You see? Then we're going to look at the ministry of Jesus. Jesus came to do so much more than to save us from our sins. He came to restore our faith in humanity. When you look at what's going on in the news today, people hanging nooses and all of the racial intolerance and all of the pain and suffering and the hurt in the world today, it doesn't have to be this way, brothers and sisters. That is not how it's telling me that there are so many needs in this world that are unmet. And God has the answer to them. And the answer to them is Jesus. Y'all excited about this? Any of y'all have some needs that you recognize that have been unmet? Raise your hand if you got a need that's been unmet in his life. God has done his part. He has done his part. He's provided for us everything that we need in this life. We just have to recognize, number one, what the needs are and how to access what he's provided for us to have those needs met. You see? Go ahead.
Well, good question is, how many people want their needs met?
Good question. Excellent question. Excellent question. Brother said the question is, how many people want their needs met? And you know what? If a person does not want help, you can't help them. I have seen in my life many times where someone needed help but didn't want it, and you tried to help them but they didn't want it. Good question, bro. Excellent question. Now, what that does too, if you see someone who has a need and you try to help them and then they reject your help, that makes you feel a certain way. You feel rejected. You see? All of these things contribute to how we get to where we are in this life. A large part of our success or failure in trying to help someone is dependent upon our approach. A lot of times we have the wrong approach. And remember, I told you a basic human need is everybody wants to feel accepted. Nobody wants to be pounced upon. And one of the problems we have in the Lord's church, and one of the reasons why we're so unsuccessful at converting people, is because of our approach. I truly believe that, number one, you don't compromise on the truth. You teach the word, but how you teach it, how you approach it makes all the difference in the world. Because if you came to me, if I was in sin and you came to me and you just railed on me and told me you going to hell and I'm not going to want to hear anything else you have to tell me. Jesus' approach, I see your hands. Jesus' approach was that he was compassionate with people. In Matthew chapter 9, the Bible said that Jesus entered all of the cities and all of the villages and taught the people and healed all manner of sickness and preached the gospel unto them. And it says why he did it, because he was filled with compassion upon them when he saw how they were like sheep scattered without a shepherd. They were lost. And what Jesus did, his approach was, number one, he supplied their immediate need. You ever wonder why Jesus fed the hungry, why he healed the sick, why he did all these things? Because this was their immediate physical need. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Jesus demonstrated that he cared for people, that he was concerned about people's lives and the condition and the quality of their lives. And then they were receptive to the spiritual message that he had to give them. We jump on people without even being concerned about their physical, psychological welfare. We jump right into, that's not Jesus' approach.
That question I asked, about people not receiving the help that they need, because a lot of times it takes them outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah,
It
right.
takes them outside of their comfort zone, especially spiritually. If you got a person who's
So they can hear you.
who's so involved in the world, and you trying to help them spiritually, they're so attached to the worldly environment that they don't want to come out of it, even though they see the need. They see what they need to help them, but they don't want to receive it because it takes them outside their comfort zone. And a lot of people are afraid to step into unknown territory.
Right. Well, that's called faith. Faith is all about stepping into unknown territory. That's why the book said we walk by faith and not by sight. But you have to get there. You don't start off right there. Next week, brothers and sisters, we're going to begin our journey. We're going to look at how God made us.